All right, coming in at number 35 on our Locked On Senators 2023 NHL Draft Rankings. It's a Danish forward centerman who's playing in the Swedish Hockey League. It's Oscar Fisker Mølgaard.
Yeah, Ross, it's very impressive what Oscar Fisker Molgaard has been able to do. And you mentioned playing in the Swedish Hockey League. Well, it wasn't just a cup of coffee. He basically had one of those big Tim Hortons things you see at work functions where you can pour about 41 cups of it, because he had 41 games in the SHL this season. And he was able to be a big part of that team and what they were trying to accomplish. And in the J20 league, he had success there, obviously, in 21 games, 6 goals, 17 assists for 23 points, as you see on the graphic here. But in the SHL, in 41 games, he had 4 goals, 3 assists, good for 7 points. But Oscar Fisker Molgaard isn't a guy that you're looking to light up the stat sheet when you're highlighting what he's good at. I think, Ross, this is a really good defensive-minded forward.
I do too. Now he's 6 foot tall, 163 pounds. So he's going to need some time to fill out, to say, and that's not a bad thing. I think that a slow and steady approach with guys in this range is extremely respectable and honestly should be promoted for that. But I also don't want to see him pigeonholed into a role where he can't show any of his offense. I know that elite prospects used Mikael Backlund as a shades of. I'm going to go with Joel Eriksson Ek, like another, Scandinavian, solid defensively, but he's also a guy that I know he's got more size than Fisker Molgaard, but I also think that he can be a guy who creates in the offensive zone, because his hockey IQ stood out for me in all the plays. Just smart little plays, makes his line mates better. And I think that's going to be his calling card at the NHL level. I think he's going to find a role on a penalty killing unit, as well as like maybe a second power play unit, depending on, how long the development curve takes. But I see some serious upside with him. And I believe he's going back to HV71 next year. It's a great program that's developed a lot of NHL talent over the years in Sweden. And our prospect scouts see him as like a late first, mid second. Elite prospects, the highest on him at 28th overall. Corey Prodman has him at 37. Whoa. Prodman and Wheeler almost agree.
Weird.
Wow. Wheeler has him at 39. Chris Peters at 46. Craig Button at 45. So I think that's a very fair range for him. 28 to 45-ish. But man, does this not scream Detroit Red Wings?
Yeah, it does. And he's kind of like a poor man's Marco Casper. I think there's a lot of similarities there. But I highlighted his defensive play, Ross, but that's not to say he has no offense. Like the highlights I saw of him in the SHL, what I noticed he did a really good job of is he's a great net front presence. Like he's screening goalies, he's getting tips, he's getting deflections, and he hounds down rebounds and is able to just call them garbage goals as much as you want. They look the same on the score sheet and they help your team win games.
Hey, mole garbage goals?
Mole garbage goals. I like that. But that's the thing, because he's such a kind of a tough player to play against. He's winning those net front battles up against other defensemen, and he's getting there. And then when you reverse it, and he's on defense in his own zone, he's smart enough to know, how do I effectively win these battles up against the boards? How do I put myself in a position to make it really tough on teams to find open ice when they're attacking? And I think he does a great job of that. So I think this is a very safe pick, Ross. This is another one where you're like, I can definitely see Oscar Fisker Molgaard playing in the NHL at some point. He's already playing 41 games in the SHL at this age. So he has that pro experience and he has the trust from his coaches that he can do that. I think that we're going to see him play as a third line center and be on a top penalty killing unit.
He's a little bit higher than where we have him on my own personal list.
Oh, really? Okay. See, I would have him a little lower. I think for me, he's somewhere in the 40s.
Contentious. He's start of the second round type pick. Like, I feel like centermen always go early in the second round.
But consider this draft, Ross. There's so many centermen in the first round. Like the first 5 picks are centermen.
Yeah, and well, those first 5 picks with Leo Carlsson and Adam Fantilli both got to play at the World Championships. I get it that Oscar Fisker Molgaard would not have played at the World Championships if he was if he was Swedish or Canadian or American. But the fact that he got that pro experience as well, no points, but EP said that he impressed scouts with his work rate there and just proving that, like, whether they're 30 years old, playing pro hockey for years, or whether they're his age group where he dominated, he's able to stack up defensively and not be an easy check for other teams, even though they're pro players. So I think this is going to be a really intriguing pick. If your team just took Oscar Fisker Molgaard, like, I would be very intrigued. I would be doing a lot of watching at dev camp, because I could also see him as the type of guy where if he gets over to the North American ice, I could see him just being like one of those guys who's one of the best players at dev camp. And you're just like, oh, well, that opens some eyes. Obviously, he won't be at training camp this year because he's going to be overseas, but this guy might never play in the AHL. I think he might be 2 more years in Sweden, come right over and be in the NHL.
I mean, if he gets 3 years of SHL experience under his belt,
right,
that's pretty comparable to AHL. So yeah, I think that's fair.
And with his style of play, right? Like we talked, he's fast, he's got great hockey IQ, and he's a defensive, I don't want to say genius, but he's very solid defensively. Yep. Like, doesn't that all translate better to the small ice surface?
You would think. Yeah, exactly.
So that's my take on Oscar Fisker Molgaard, and I'm really excited to see where he goes. The start of the second round is going to be phenomenal. We're going to have our immediate reaction podcast after the first round. That'll be our Wednesday pod on draft night, because we're going to do the live stream just on YouTube before the draft. But right after the second day of the draft, we're going to jump on, do an immediate draft reaction. And I think I'm going to be really intrigued. I might have to bring up where Oscar Fisker Molgaard goes. So stay tuned for all that. We're a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.